So, I think it's time to start. Honourable Ministers and Heads of Delegation, friends and colleagues and cryosphere scientists. Welcome to this press event to release a statement by ministers who are part of the Ambition on Melting Ice High-Level Group, or AMI as we call it. My name is Helga Barðardóttir. I come from the Ministry of Environment, Energy and Climate in Iceland and also head of the delegation from Iceland. And I'm also one of the co-chairs in AMI, along with Celia. We are just waiting for Julio, who is on his way. He got lost in the space here. It's so easy, as you might know, but he is on his way. Julio is ambassador, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Chile. And at the stage here, I'm joined by from the government of Monaco, Minister of Urban Planning, the Environment and Public Works, the Honourable Ms. Céline Caron-Daguillon. Caron, okay, good. And from the government of Nepal, Secretary Deepak Karal. From the government of Liberia, Mr. Benjamin S. Kamor. And then we have James Kirkham. And I would like to turn the word over to James. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Helga. So, honourable ministers, colleagues, friends, we are witnessing the massively accelerated melting of the Earth's ice sheets, glaciers, sea ice, and the thawing of permafrost compared to just a few decades ago. The rate of sea level rise has already doubled within my own lifetime, and last year glaciers suffered the largest mass loss ever measured. The impacts of these ice losses are affecting millions of people already today, and their further acceleration will set off a profound cascade of impacts on economies, ecosystems, and livelihoods that will be felt across the world. As a scientist, these impacts terrify me. But what terrifies me even more is that the pace of global action to address these threats remains light years away from what the science unanimously shows and says we must do in order to minimize the global climate damage that continues to grow hour by hour. The science is absolutely clear. Only 1.5 degree aligned NDCs can minimize the irreversible damage caused by cryosphere loss. We must now all sharpen our efforts to deliver greater climate ambition here at COP29. There's simply no time left to delay. Thank you.
Thank you, James. What James has just told us is actually the reason why we founded AMI at COP27 in Egypt, by 20 governments concerned at the escalating loss of snow and ice, and drawing a connection between these polar and mountain regions and low-lying and downstream nations very far from any ice or snow, yet feeling the impact. We have since grown to 25 nations, and we're quite happy to welcome earlier at COP29 the government of Germany and Paulo as AMI members. Are there any representatives from these two countries in the room? No. Given the sharpening of the scientific message from cryosphere or ice regions over the past 2 years, we felt it important to raise these issues with additional urgency now here at COP29, and negotiations enter the final stage. And as you witnessed by James's words, we base our work on science. We think that is really important to hammer on the message from the science. So, but now I would like to give the word to Minister Caron.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, dear friends. At the outset, allow me to thank the governments of Chile and Iceland for convening us today and for the leaderships on this crucial topic. Last year, we engaged with the Ambition on Melting Ice High-Level Group on the margin of COP28 and underline the importance of scaling up our mitigation actions to preserve cryosphere around the world. Avoid crossing critical thresholds and allow for some degrees of adaptation. As you know, Monaco has no cryosphere on its territory. We are Mediterranean Sea, we are quite away from this topic, but not so far away. We are a coastal territory and we will be facing sea level rise. And that's our link for the cryosphere topic. Our dedication to preserve it dates back to more than a century ago, driven by the personal interest and scientific curiosity of successive princes. And thus, upon the will of His Serene Highness Prince Albert II, the IPCC special report on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate was supported by and adopted in Monaco 5 years ago. Today, the commitment is based on the scientific consensus that the consequences of its losses anywhere on our planet put the human civilization and biodiversity at stake. Sea level rise, acidification, diminishing freshwater resource, global warming, and our local biodiversity loss are all tied to the shrinking cryospheres. In addressing these issues, we are fiercely convinced that science must be the basis of our action. The worst is ahead of us if we don't act now and don't commit to the objective of 1.5 objective. And the window is very closing nearly. We must bear in mind that the dramatic loss of cryosphere may be permanent. We are truly committed to the preservation of both cryosphere and the ocean. Both of them are linked, totally linked. They cover most of our planet, and we proudly support the ambition of meeting Highest Ministerial Declaration on growing cryosphere loss and the urgent need to reach 1.5 consistent NDCs. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I now now it's my pleasure to offer the floor to Mr. Kamor of Liberia.
Thank you very much. Liberia, as you know, is the least developed country that is being impacted as a result of climate change. It's a coastal West African country, highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Liberia continues to experience sea level rise. As a result of sea level rise, lives have been lost, infrastructures have been destroyed, thereby exacerbating the vulnerability of our people. In this COP, Liberia called for drastic emission reduction, especially those countries that continue to pollute the global atmosphere. In this COP, Liberia seeks to urge and foster genuine partnership in ensuring that this COP will address those vulnerable countries that are continuing to be impacted as a result of climate change. And we are highly grateful to be part of this press briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Julio, who will read out the statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elga, and apologies for being late. It was not an easy task to find the room. So thank you very much for being here, and also for the members of the Ambition for Melting Ice initiative. I would also like to add my voice to the previous speakers in saying that for Chile, which is a southern hemisphere country that looks into Antarctica, that holds most of the glaciers in South America, the consequences of climate change in the cryosphere are absolutely a potentially devastating process that will affect our water security, our food security, and in general the livelihoods of many people and communities in Chile. So, and this is why, of course, we have been in the forefront of this initiative together with Iceland, together with the International Cryosphere Climate Initiative, the ICCI, And as you know, we launched this initiative a few years ago back now, but we felt that with the new information, with the new scientific information that we have available, it was timely to have a new declaration that tries to support the idea that we need to increase ambition in mitigation in order to control, in order to contain the effects of climate change in the cryosphere, and therefore with all the ripple effects it has in many economic and social dimensions. So I will read this declaration out for your knowledge, and of course very happy to continue this conversation. So this is the AMI Ambition for Melting Ice COP29 ministerial statement. Growing cryosphere loss means urgent need for 1.5 consistent NDCs. Since its founding at COP27, the AMI high-level group on sea level rise and mountain water resources has raised the risk and widespread damage caused by cryosphere loss, not just in polar and mountain regions, but touching every country on Earth, and has urged rapid course correction towards a safer 1.5 trajectory. In just the 2 years since, new cryosphere science has sharpened the need for transformative climate action by 2030 even further. Latest science points to feedbacks from polar and mountain region from our current emission trajectory that will have extreme and irreversible economic, social, and environmental consequences throughout the planet. Research also makes clear that the only way to slow and avert these global irreversible economic, social, and environmental impacts from cryosphere loss is the necessary task of deep, rapid, and sustained greenhouse gas emission cuts congruent with the 1.5 Paris limit. Staying below this limit with little or no overshoot remains within reach, but only with fully 1.5 consistent NDCs in 2025, and course correction toward 1.5 of pre-2030 action. We call on all countries to address the crisis in the cryosphere to avert destabilization, disruption, and displacement at global scales, considering the long-term irreversible damage their countries will see from cryosphere loss without fully 100 degrees consistent NDCs. Otherwise, global cryosphere will continue to thaw and melt with irreversible and widespread global losses as a result. A planet with less or no cryosphere is a very different planet from what we know, from that known by humanity throughout its existence. We further call on the COP29 presidency, the COP28 to COP30 Troika presidencies and parties explicitly to recognize the irreversible impacts from cryosphere loss that will occur with each rise above today's greenhouse gas levels and every fraction of a degree of further warming, let alone overshoot of the 1.5 limit. We call on all COP29 parties to include that call in the relevant COP29 decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. I would now like to give the floor to Secretary Karal of Nepal. Please.
Thank you, Co-Chair, for this opportunity. Dear Honorable Minister, Excellencies, delegates, and all participants. First, I am thankful for organizing this important press conference and also inviting me in the dais. And really, I am very happy. And you know that Nepal is also a cryosphere country, and Nepal has many mountain peaks and having snow and ice in large amount. And in that respect, we are one of the much contributor countries for developing the cooling agent of the earth, you know. And Himalayas, ice and snows are the cooling agent of the earth. For that perspective, we are working in that line. Really, this ice and snows in the Himalayas and high mountains are our fundamental life support elements, without which we cannot imagine our lives in the long run. And we are now suffering from melting of this ice and snow in high rate. This is our problem. And if this rate continues, I think 2/3 of our ice and snow will be lost by the end of this century. This is severe. And if this situation continues, we need to migrate from our original place to other places where it will create the population problem and other problems. And this, right now, we are also suffering from melting of this ice in great extent. And because of that, we are suffering greatly for drinking water, for agriculture, for water resources, energy, irrigation, and all sorts of things. And these are not only these are infrastructure, economic sector. For tourism perspectives is also we are getting problems because there is no ice and snow in the Himalayas. No tourism will be there, and tourism is one of our resources for foreign currency income and other income resources. There are impact in many other areas, and international community we need to work together to conserve, to protect this situation in the long run. In one side of the earth, the ice is melting somewhere in the high altitude, and in the other side of the earth, the oceanic countries are sinking in the ocean. Both situations is very severe, and probably we need to work together as one landscape approach, and we need to control in both situations. And therefore, government of Nepal this year has decided to organize one Mount Everest dialogue so that we can discuss these things together with oceanic countries and high altitude Himalayan mountain countries together and discuss in landscape approach. And coming days, I think the international community, scientists, and all peoples will work together to come up with one single ideas how we can save our earth through conserving Himalayas, ice and snows. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary Karel. I expect that the statement will be issued on AMI's webpage, as well as where you can also find the original declaration from 2019. No, sorry, from COP27 it was. So, and I think we are almost to the end of this press meeting, but if you have any questions, we are happy to take them.
Thank you. Ramesh Bosal from Nepal. I'm a journalist based in Nepal. I work for a global network of environment journalists called Earth Journalism Network. I have two questions. One, I was in COP in 2009, and scientists were saying that we don't have time. Now also they are saying we don't have time. So what is that meaning of we don't have time? I think we need to tell it in a more clear way. First, do you think there's a response to it? Second is, when we talk to scientists, they say, politicians don't listen to us. So you are a politician as well. So do you listen and tell this message when you are negotiating? Or you don't understand the science, or you think science is weak and you don't have to trust it? How do you respond to it? Any politicians on the floor?
Okay, I'm a politician, but we listen to the scientists, and we try, on our political point of view, to push the scientific point of view in the position of Monaco. As I said, for more than 1 decade, Prince of Monaco was very dedicated to scientifics and very informed by the scientifics. But we are not alone. That's why when we are at the COP, we push the point of view of the scientific to say we have to do our NDC correct for on the same trajectory that the scientifics aware us. So 1.5 is not an option. We have to do it. Otherwise, we will face the problems that the scientific says on cryosphere, on ocean, and everything. But I am one of politics, and we are plenty other politics to convince about that. That's why the COP are here. That's why we are with Chile, with Iceland, and other countries sharing this kind of initiatives to push and to be sure that the scientific point of view is well understood by everybody and not just put it on a rubbish bin.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Sriram Subedi. I'm also from Nepal, because Nepal is more related to the mountain than Himalayas. So why I'm interested to know from this panel, is that when we talk about research, in amount of research, scientific research, the Arctic, the Antarctic, the same kind of research is not there in the Himalayas, in Nepal, in high altitude. So when we talk about science and evidences, and we need the research. So I think there is a gap how we, when we talk over here, how we increase our research on high Himalayas with more weather station, local weather pattern changes, and everything, including the satellite, number one. And number two, I would be interested is that in the Hindu Kush Himalayas ranges that extend from the Afghanistan to Burma in the east is also a political hotspot. Pakistan is there, the China is there, and India is there, who would not sit together to talk to. So can we bring this political deadlock of talking each other, taking the center stage of the Himalayas, and how we can do putting the science first? Thank you.
James?
Thank you. I'll go back to the previous question to start with about not having time. So there is a part of this question which rings true, right? Because we didn't have time then, we don't have time now. Regardless of what we do now, we have committed a huge amount of damage to these glaciers, ice sheets, which will roll on for hundreds of years in some cases, and we'll have to adapt to that. However, the difference with this is that we can still choose between high and low emissions, and this is essentially the difference between being able to adapt to these impacts over long time scales in terms of the rates of sea level rise, the amount we have to adapt to, and also how we manage our water scarcity and security in the future. But if we continue as we are on our current NDCs, our current high emissions pathway, then we'll be heading towards a much more difficult place to adapt to and into much larger loss and damage territory.
Thank you. We have exactly 2 minutes until we will be thrown out of this room. So if we could take one quick question before we leave. Is there anyone that can put forward a very quick question? No, that don't seem to be the... Oh.
Sorry, there were no other people, just wanted to think. So do you think that this process, because there is so much of anger and anxiety back home where you are, or I mean, whether it's developed or, least developed, but do you think this process will yield something? Or there has been, talks among yourself that it is not going to work and we should, search something else to make it work?
Thank you. We are part of the global community, and the issue of climate change is a global issue. It's a multilateral process we find ourselves. You have Liberia, a country in terms of emission is negligible, but we continue to face the severe consequences of climate change. So in this process, I'm very optimistic. I know there are various issues, finance, calling for drastic cut in emission, at the same time talking about capacity building, the deployment of technology. I'm optimistic in that once we are part of the global community, we must be able to provide leadership in solving a global issue of this nature. It may be slow, but we have to continue to re-echo that this earth is in a crisis. We have this global crisis, climate crisis, and we have to work together to solve it. So I'm very optimistic.
Thank you. Then we are up to the end of this session. But if I might add to this, I think even though we think this process is slow and don't deliver what we want, I think without it we would be most worse off. So that's my answer to it. So we can do better. But I would like to thank you all for coming. And as I said, you can find both the declaration and statement on Amy's web in few minutes or hours, I don't know. So thank you all.